Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is such a beloved book, I figured I would do a review on it, give my opinions, and do a spoiler-free review. So let's get started. I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. I'll get deeper into my actual review, but I would like to say that this book took me about a week or so to finish. For books that I genuinely enjoy, that's kind of a long time. During that time I was sick, so it took me a little bit longer to read. Now, there have been complaints that this book is slow to start, so I'm not sure if the reason it took me so long was because it was a slow read or because I was sick, but let's get into it. So, Six of Crows is a duology, and it follows 6 people. It follows Kaz, Inej, Nina, Matthias, Jasper, and Waylon. So they all are part of a street gang in Ireland, I guess, called Kirch. And they are employed by the Merchant Council to conduct a heist of an inventor that has made essentially a drug that is going to be very powerful and could change the fates of their world, and the inventor has fallen into the wrong hands, or so we're led to believe he's in the wrong hands. And so the heist begins. The plot was very well developed, even though I hadn't read the previous series, which was the Grisha trilogy, which started this whole world. I was able to still pick up the language and all of that through the characters' behaviors and through their reactions and just their personalities in general. With a lot of YA novels or just authors in general, they tend to do a lot of info dumping, whether that be through a character that's just new or a dumb character that just asks a lot of questions. And so we get an understanding of the world through that sort of word vomit, and that wasn't really the case here. We saw the world through the characters' eyes and through their actions and the descriptions in the book, and so it was a clearer representation of the world than just a character saying, oh hey, by the way, and then going into a 7-page monologue supposed to give us some insight into the world and where we are right now. There were 3 major twists in this book. Like I said, this is going to be spoiler free, so I'm just going to tell you how each twist felt. The first twist was involving the inventor, and honestly I felt like the twist was unnecessary. I didn't, at least at this time, only having read the first book, I don't feel like the twist was gonna change the story in any way. I don't know if the book would have been any different had that twist not been there, but who knows, maybe in the second book it will be relevant. Twist I enjoyed. It was in character for the person that it was about. I think that it wasn't out of left field. I think it was something that feasibly could have happened based on this character's personality. I did not think that it was unnecessary, and I agree with her writing that into her book, which she can do whatever she wants, but I didn't dislike that twist. And then the third twist I also enjoyed. I thought that it was a very good way to usher in the second book, and I think that it's going to be a very exciting plot. So I thought that that twist was also very good. Just in general, the plot was very interesting. I didn't really have any complaints about that. I felt like the plot devices used were very in character, and I didn't have any issues with anything that really went on. So next we will get into characters. I'm going to have quotes on the screen of the characters, about the characters that I'm discussing. These are, I feel like, a good representation of the character from where they started to where they ended, and you can see the character growth through the quotes. In general, the characters I felt were very well developed. This series kind of felt like a very character-based book, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm a very character-based person. I don't really like plot-based books because I don't feel like I can generally relate to the characters. I don't generally care about where the plot is going if I don't like the characters that I'm reading about. If I can't relate to you, then I'm not going to relate to your troubles, and I'm probably not going to care if what you want is what you get in the end. So that's just how I enjoy my books, and this was written in a way that satisfied those character-driven needs that I have. I also enjoyed that this book had a lot of realistic characters, which you don't see in YA all of that often. This kind of introduced the idea of morally gray characters that have flaws and that react to things in a way that isn't perfect, and you have to kind of decide whether you want this person to get what they want or not. And it makes you kind of struggle internally with how you feel about the character knowing they do X, Y, and Z. And I thoroughly enjoy kind of gray areas. I don't like cookie cutter characters. I like realistic views and being able to say, yes, this is how a normal person would react in the given situation. So I really enjoyed the character growth, the relationship development, and just the complexities that you see of people living the way that they're living and reacting the way that they're reacting. I didn't think that it was unrealistic to the situations that they were in and the sorts of people that they were. But I want to do a deeper dive into the characters themselves. So we'll start with the lesser characters and work our way up. So we will start with Gels. Gels, he is the leader of a rival gang called the Black Tips. He is introduced in the first chapter during a scuffle with our main characters. He really served two purposes. One was to show that Kaz is an intelligent criminal, that he can really outsmart anybody that he wants to, and that he's always one step ahead. And two, he served to show that Kaz will put anybody in any sort of situation, no matter the danger, because he thinks that they should and can handle whatever may come. Beyond the initial conflict with Kaz and our other main characters in the beginning, there is a scuffle again later on in our journey, and then once that scuffle kind of resolves itself, Bills and the Black Tips are irrelevant beyond that point. We will move on to Haskell. I'm going to be calling him Haskell from here on. He runs the Dregs gang, which is the gang that they're all part of. But it's made very clear from the beginning that he is inconsequential to actually how the gang runs. It's made obvious that the gang is actually run and built up by Kaz, and that Haskell is just kind of there as the figurehead. Kaz uses him to make decisions, kind of like, this is what Haskell wants, we're doing what Haskell wants, but it's fairly obvious that Kaz is running the whole show. Really described as kind of just an old man that sits around and does nothing. There is some illusion that he might be more than he seems, but we don't really see that in this book. Next up is Tanti Helens. She runs the menagerie, the brothel that Inej was indentured to before Kaz bought out her indenture. She serves as Inej's main antagonist, the kind of figure or symbol that Inej has to fight and overcome before she can evolve into the person that she's supposed to be or wants to be or what have you. She's seen several times throughout the novel. She doesn't play a huge part aside from, again, that obstacle that Inej needs to overcome. So next is Van Eck. He is the merchant that Kaz deals with, spokesperson for the Merchant Council during this whole time. He originally is the one that comes forward and says, the Merchant Council wants you to do this is how you're going to do it, this is how much you're going to get paid. So that's who he is. See him in the very beginning and then at the end. Next would be Pika Rollins. He is a rival gang leader that serves as Kaz's personal antagonist, is the reason that, and this isn't a spoiler because it happens pretty early on, you find out a couple chapters in, he is the reason that Kaz's brother died. So Kaz is sort of determined to get his revenge on Rollins throughout the novel, and Rollins really shapes the sort of person that Kaz is. So next, let's move on to the gang themselves. We'll start with Waylon. So Waylon is Van Eck's the merchant's son. He was brought into the gang as the bomb maker. He is a young kid that was basically raised in privilege, who really has no exposure to the Barrel, which is the slums of Kerch. Really has no exposure to the Barrel or killing or just that criminal thieving way of life. So this is kind of his first foray into that. Next is Jasper. He is a farm boy who came to the barrel, became a gambling addict, and joined the dregs. He, throughout the whole book, kind of is struggling with facing the future and what the reward is going to bring him, and getting over his gambling addiction, face who he is and what the future looks like for him. Next up is our main four. So we'll start with Matthias. He is the love interest to Nina. He is a soldier from the country that they're conducting the heist in. He is brought in to assist with the layout and the protocols of the ice court where this inventor is supposed to be. He previously captured Nina and held her captive on a ship. The ship was transporting her and other Grisha that were to be put on trial and sentenced to death in his home country. The ship sinks, Nina saves him, and they have to kind of rely on each other for survival until they can be saved. Romantic feelings and admiration kind of blooms for her over time, despite being raised to believe that Grisha are demons and that they should all be executed and that they will destroy the world. We are introduced to him during a prison break because Nina wrongly accuses him of being a slaver. She uses Kaz to break him out of prison. Matthias is kind of told that if he conducts this heist, then he will be given a pardon from his crimes. He will be able to go back to his country and he will be a soldier once again. The entirety of the book is Matthias struggling with the closed-minded ideology that he was trained into, and his feelings for Nina and the remainder of the crew. So throughout the book, he kind of recognizes that he has these lustful feelings for Nina, and that he doesn't really, even though he feels this way, he recognizes that she's a demon and that she should ultimately be killed. He slowly sees that they're humans too. Alright, so next is Nina, who is Matthias's love interest. She's a Grisha. She's a heartrender, so she can control people's hearts. She escaped capture with Matthias. She gets him imprisoned. She goes to Kirch, starts working with Cass and trying to figure out how she's going to get Matthias out of prison because she feels a lot of guilt. She is recruited to this heist for her powers and her relationship with Matthias. Matthias has a lot of information about the court, so they really need his help, and they know that her offering to pardon him will kind of bring him in. He is a very headstrong character. He is very empathetic. Everyone, including the people that have imprisoned and murdered her people. When she saves Matthias from drowning, when the ship that she's imprisoned on goes down, he asks her why, and she says, because you're a human being. So she, even though is struggling with her duty to her people, she recognizes that everyone is human and that everyone has value, and they end up working together during this heist, together and then together with the crew as a whole. Through this book, she knows that this inventor is endangering her people with this drug that is ultimately killing them. It's making them very strong, and then it's killing them. And so she has to struggle with feeling guilty about what she did to Matthias, and knowing that this pardon, after they finish the heist, is the only way that she can absolve herself of this guilt and know that she has given him his life again. And the idea that this guy's invention could be killing her people, and she has the chance to stop. So she kind of struggles with that throughout the book. Inej, her nickname is the Wraith. She was a former prostitute who was captured and sold into an indenture during the World War that happened in the Grisha trilogy. Her indenture was purchased by the Dregs, or Kaz, after she offered to be Kaz's like secret finder. Throughout the book, she debates why she took the job. Was it for Kaz? Was it to pay off her debt? Was it for her? She eventually grows into the idea that she is doing this for her, that she has dreams and that she wants things from this money and that she's going to have her own life, just be Kaz's wraith. Or Kaz's falcon, or Kaz's secret finder, or whatever Kaz wants her to be. And so while she's making this decision about who she wants to be and what she's going to do with the money, she's also grappling with the idea of leaving Kaz with these romantic feelings that she's having for him. And she basically comes to the determination that she's going to have all of him or none of him, and all of him or none of him is not going to stop her from having the life that she wants to have. She is probably my second favorite character. The majority of the point of views of this book are set with her. It has a lot of growth, I think, and whereas with Nina, she kind of already knows who she is, and her struggle is more of about her duty to her people. This is Inej kind of realizing that she is her own person, and that she doesn't owe anybody anything, and that she can be herself and live the life that she wants and do what she wants to do. I think that was really solid growth. So next up is Kaz, and his nickname is Dirty Hands. He is a farm boy who lost everything and moved to the barrel with his brother. His brother dies and he sets out to avenge his brother's death. His entire purpose is to be the downfall and eventually kill Pika Rollins. He has built himself up into this barrel rat that was a product of the barrel, when that's not necessarily true. He uses just that as like a fear tactic, the idea that he is the barrel and he knows everything about the barrel and you cannot outsmart him. One thing I enjoy about Kaz is that he takes every weakness that he has and turns it into a fear tactic. So he uses his limp as a fear tactic. You know, when you see a guy with a cane or you hear a cane, you know something's about to go down. There is a weakness that he cannot exploit, a weakness of his own that he cannot exploit, and that is his fear of the touch of another person. He wears like long jackets and all of that, and he also wears leather gloves. This weakness is kind of used because they constantly talk about how he has blood on his hands, and they tell stories about how his hands are scarred and they just don't look like human hands anymore. But it's not really anything that he uses as fear, I guess. It's more just he sees it as a constant weakness, eventually put into a situation where this fear is used against him, and he has to decide what he's going to do with this fear. He consistently puts his crew at risk because he thinks they should be able to or can handle whatever comes their way. His entire persona revolves around this idea that he is smarter than everybody else. He's always a step ahead. If you think you're going to ambush him, he expected you to ambush him, and he's going to have a backup plan for the backup plan. And usually this ego allows him to get out of a lot of situations that might have otherwise ended very poorly. And the one time that this ego or this idea fails, it ultimately ends up putting another person's life and their lives at risk. When I was talking earlier about morally gray characters, they're all a little bit morally gray, but he really is the main character that you have to decide whether he is good in the sense of whether you want him to succeed or you think he's a villain. He personally really reminded me of Tommy Shelby from the Peaky Blinders, and that's kind of the vibe that I got from the whole storyline, and I loved it. He is my favorite character in this whole series, and I really enjoyed the amount of character growth that we saw from him, even though the majority of it was flashbacks. I'm excited to see if we see any character growth in the second novel. I really enjoyed him. Some people say he's the least liked character, but I enjoyed that moral grayness of him. So before we move on to discuss the writing, I thought I could give a little bit of insight into the actual romantic relationships that we see in this book. Mostly it is Inej and Kaz, and Nina and Matthias. So we'll start with Inej and Kaz. I appreciate the portrayal of their relationship probably more than anything in this book. Kaz is a morally gray character, like I said, that doesn't change just because he has feelings. He puts her in danger just like he puts everybody else in danger, and they don't have this rose-colored ideal of who the other person is. The realism about the weaknesses of each person isn't clouded over by their love, and neither are the issues, and the love doesn't change anything about the person. Inej doesn't magically overcome the struggles that she's having just because she is in love with Kaz, and Kaz doesn't magically overcome his weaknesses because of Inej. They end the book with the same mental barriers and battles that they had to begin with. And so I felt that was like a very accurate portrayal of a real relationship where even though you love this person and you're with this person, you still have your own battles, and that person isn't curing you. They're not making you better. They're not making you better in the sense that just their presence alone and just their love combats anything that you have internal going on, anything that you are struggling with or having to overcome. The other relationship is Nina and Matthias. Their relationship felt very real in a different way than Inej and Kaz. Both Nina and Matthias are dealing with internal struggles that make them question their core beliefs. More so Matthias, who has to question what he's always led to believe is right and what he believes. Nina struggles knowing that she cares deeply for someone that she can't really trust and who comes from a belief system that thinks her people should be slaughtered. She sees the underlying love for humanity that he has, but she questions his end goal. I appreciate that they use each other for their own purpose as well, for the betterment of their people or what they believe to be the betterment of their people, whether it be to survive or reach the common end goal. So ultimately, I loved both relationships for different reasons. I felt they were both very realistic. Inej and Kaz more so to the daily couple, even though they're going through unrealistic things. I felt that Kaz and Inej most resembled a couple with real issues, and then Nina and Matthias were more broad idea of love versus belief system. Again, Nina and Matthias didn't really change each other either. They kind of just gave them both a deeper understanding of people that aren't like you, and even though they're not like you, they're humans too and they have rights. And yeah, so let's move on to the writing. I will start with my gripe, because I don't really think that prior to this I have said many bad things about this book, but there were a couple of things that I did not like with the writing. There were 2 point of views that I felt like were really completely unnecessary. Prologue, where we are introduced to a character that is never relevant again, really was kind of irritating in it, because we could have been introduced to the ideals that he presented through the eyes of one of our characters. We didn't need this throwaway character. And then there is a chapter from Kika Rowland's point of view, which is pointless because it's an interaction between our main characters and Rowland's. So it had just been told from our main character's point of view, and it flowed a lot better than it did. And it kind of just felt like, why? Why did we have to hear about these 2 people's thoughts when it can be hard to get into a character's head to begin with? So why introduce us to throwaway characters that we know nothing about, we can't get a sense of their tone or anything like that, and then just never show them again? You could have written the same things that they experienced in a different way, made it more cohesive. So that was, even though it was only 2 chapters, it made it a little like stop and go. The middle of the book felt very drawn out. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's because I was sick or what, but I felt like they talked about their journey to the ice court and their plans way too much, because ultimately we didn't discover any of the plans or what they were going to do until it happened. So even though we got a little bit of character growth, particularly from Matthias, it didn't really feel like it was needed. I felt like his character growth could have been introduced somewhere else. It honestly felt about 200 pages too long. They could have condensed their journey from the ship to the ice court down into a couple of pages, and we would not have missed that much. So it just felt a little bit unnecessary. So I will say with the writing that the atmosphere was sculpted very well. Like I said previously, I really got this like Razor Gang vibe from this book that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I felt like the atmosphere, you could feel it and you could taste it and you could see it and you could just feel the difference between Kirch with poverty and the dirtiness and just people living like criminals and things like that, and then to the perfection of the ice court where everything is clean and all of the dirtiness is kind of hidden away. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of the whole book. So that's pretty much all I have to say. This was, like I said, a 4 out of 5 star read for me. This book felt very fun to read, and I am excited to read the second book. Probably won't do a full review on it. I'm excited to get back into the world and get into our main characters' heads again and see where they are and what becomes of them. So that is the end of my review. Thank you for watching if you made it to the end. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified whenever I post next, and I will see you guys in my next video.